extended to spend instead of.
Well, it wasn't always. That was just the last 2 weeks.
Well, yeah.
I reset that thing this morning, and then I had to do this thing on my laptop one more time, and now it came up the way it's supposed to come up. So I guess we'll see. Yeah, it's a weak rum and Coke. Oh, that's recorded. Yeah. It's iced tea with pineapple juice.
Right.
What was I talking about? Oh, let's see. We did this last time. Oh, one thing that we should point out about our discussion last time that I kept glossing over. I kept saying that CEX has maintenance fees, but they're kind of nominal. Well, if you're dealing with large amounts of gigahashes, that maintenance fee can add up. It's 19 cents per year per gigahash. So if you do the math on that, I think we were using the example of 3 terahashes. This number of terahashes. So given that, that is 2894 times 0.19. Well, here, let's just do it in pennies. Times 19 cents for the year divided by 12 months. So that's the number of cents per month. So divided by 100. So that's $45.82 per month in maintenance fees for that number of gigahashes. So you can look at that as being that is the cost to make sure their equipment is upkept. So if there's failed equipment, they'll replace it, blah, 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 and also the power bill. And any cooling costs, stuff like that they have over on top of that. Now, that is low. That's very inexpensive for maintenance fees. To give you an example, at 13 cents per kilowatt hour to power a device, a 200 gigahash device that's taking up about a 400 gigahash device that's taking up about 800 kilowatts of power costs about $70 per month in power. So if you were to run that piece of equipment yourself, 400 gigahashes is about $75 a month or $70 a month in an electric bill. My guess is, like, Abe, your device is costing you probably $35 a month to power. Seems about right? Yeah. Okay. So that's about the power bill for that. So for $45 a month for 3 terahashes, it's pretty cheap, pretty inexpensive.
They're charging 18 cents per month per gigahash.
It's a year.
I'm looking at their maintenance page and it's saying per month.
Are you positive?
Positive.
I think the number is 19 cents.
It says 18 per month.
18 cents per gigahash per month?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's redo our math then. And let's see how bad it is then. So that number times 18, that's the per month value, divided by 100, so that's $520. So if we divide that by, all right, so $36. So it's about equal to what it would be to pay your own power bill, rather than being inexpensive.
But
So
you don't have the cooling costs.
You don't have the cooling costs. You don't have the maintenance costs. You don't have to worry about the equipment failing. You don't have to worry about selling the equipment when it's no longer effective enough. You can just buy more gigahashes. So at the end of the day, did we make a final decision as to whether or not cloud mining is better than hardware mining or vice versa?
I feel like it depends on your scenario.
Okay. Well, let's go this route. Give me a good argument as to why mining with your own hardware makes sense.
If I don't have to pay power, I mean, if you think about it, both of them are really the same model. It's just there's less risk involved in one of them, that would be the cloud, because you don't have to worry about selling it. If we're talking like financially, there's less risk
Yep.
because you don't have to deal with all that stuff. You're transferring all that risk over to
Somebody
CDS.
else.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So I would say there's a bit more potential with hardware mining, but you also have the risk of not getting the equipment soon enough. You have to also deal with the annoying stuff with like the heat it's putting off and paying the electricity bill. But some of those things you can kind of avoid depending on your situation.
Sure. So you might have a marginal better performance with your own hardware, but I wouldn't say it's anywhere close to twice the performance.
No.
I guess my gut feeling is the performance is maybe at max 20% better. I would say max. And the cost is probably a wash with possible side effect. So if you want to keep replacing your equipment, because one of the things that that happens with hardware equipment is every single 2 weeks when the Bitcoin network gets more and more difficult, your equipment becomes less and less effective. With cloud mining, you could just add more gigahashes to keep up with the Joneses. With your own equipment, you're just looking at it like, okay, well, this equipment was performed at level X last month. Now it's at level X. Now it's at 93% of X, something like that. So it's not quite as effective as it was last month because the network is more difficult. Cracking those problems is more harder. More hardest, actually. That's correct. Hardest, right. Go ahead.
Something I noticed with the cloud mining, with a certain, I don't know if all of them do this, but a certain cloud mining site that I looked at said that for a certain gigahash, like let's say a terahash for a month, they were advertising that it made this many bitcoins in June, so like 4 months ago. Or whatever.
Yeah. I got you. So their advertising was dated.
Yeah.
So if it made that many bitcoins in June, there's been June, July, August, September. So let's just say 6 updates to the difficulty of the network since then. So they probably are performing at best 30% slower, I guess, something like that. So ultimately, I think it does come down to risk. Now, there is something cool to be said about having your own equipment. There's a hobbyist aspect to it. It kind of feels neat and that kind of stuff. One of these days, maybe at the end of class today, we'll stop 5 minutes early and we'll swing by my office and I'll show you some mining equipment I have running in there. Right now, it's mining the coin that we're going to create in here. So we have a group of coins. I've named it the Falcoin, but I'm open to get it. Falcons, the Falcoin. Haha. But I'll show you that equipment and the lengths I've taken to hide it in the drop ceiling of my office. It's very entertaining. Most of that's for heat. Campus does know about it. They had to open a special network up specifically for me to make it work. But the equipment does give off quite a bit of heat, so I put it above the drop ceiling so that the heat's up there because warm air rises. And we're on the top floor, so it's not affecting anybody. And it's also noisy. But you can see what that at least looks like. And that's not even super high-powered equipment. I would say it's what I have running in there is kind of high-end amateur equipment, something like that, or very, very, very low-end professional. Not like some of these people that have warehouses worth of stuff. But it'll at least be interesting to look at. Okay, so questions on cloud versus hardware. Safety's sake, cloud mining is the easiest way to get into it. Probably not giving up a whole lot of performance and keeping your risk low. You get buyer's remorse and 2 weeks later you just want to bail. You've collected your 2 weeks worth of mined Bitcoins. chances are in 2 weeks the price per gigahash will not have changed drastically. You can probably just get out, get all your money back. Maybe you've cost yourself a 5% or 6% loss in actual value that may or may not have been made up by the Bitcoins you earned. But you can just try it and then get out and really have risked very little, is the reality of it. Now, you go on eBay and you buy an actual piece of equipment and it ships, and 2 weeks later you have buyer's remorse and you try to sell it. Maybe it sells for half of what you bought it for. Who knows what happened during that 2 weeks when the network difficulty updated. Right now, it's in a trajectory where it just keeps getting more and more difficult because our equipment keeps getting faster and faster and faster. In fact, you can find many articles out there that ask the question, does mining still make sense? As you were looking at, doing your papers on mining, cloud mining versus hardware mining, did any of you run across any of those articles asking the question whether or not mining even makes financial sense anymore? None of you? Now, let's just assume for a second that mining might not make sense. As individuals, people like us, that might think, hey, it's cool, let's get into Bitcoin mining. It sounds neat. So you limp into it and decide, hey, let's give it a try and see what happens. If it can't be wildly profitable, maybe we're okay with that. There was once upon a time where it was wildly profitable when people were few and far between that were actually doing it. But now, in order for it to be very profitable, you have to have a lot of money into it very, very, very quickly. So for most people, you're looking for at least, hey, maybe I can say I'm a Bitcoin owner and it didn't cost me a lot of money. Something along those lines. So given a setup like that, does it make a lot of sense financially to get into Bitcoin mining today as an individual? Probably not tons. I think you can make an argument that maybe you won't lose a lot, but the question is how much will you gain, and that's going to be directly attached to the current value of Bitcoin. What a Bitcoin is worth, fair market value. Yesterday it was down a little bit. I don't know what it is today. About the same as it was yesterday, so about $460. So it's down quite a bit right now off its high. So if you think it's going to go up, you can start mining today and your Bitcoins may or may not be worth more at the end. Or you can just buy a Bitcoin or buy a fraction of a Bitcoin. So you can spend $100 on cloud mining, or you can buy 25% of a Bitcoin and just sit on it and see what happens. If Bitcoin quadruples in value, you have a whole Bitcoin. $100 turns into $400. It's a pretty good return, right? So, some people might argue, why not just buy Bitcoins and hold it rather than mine Bitcoins and hope they go up in today's market? And this actually becomes problematic for cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies require mining. Mining has to exist. So somebody has to do it. And this actually becomes an interesting scenario. Go ahead.
I was just wondering, mining has to exist for the currency to keep going, but what happens when all of the Bitcoins are going to be out from mining?
Okay, so like in what, 2170 or whatever it is? I think it's a good question. I think the idea is that there will be Bitcoin 2.0, the replacement to it, and all the current Bitcoins will just transfer over to that in value, and then the algorithm will pick up and you'll have new mining for the new coin. So the question is on the day that the final Bitcoins are mined, how does the next level of transactions occur if people stop mining? Well, what ends up happening is mining will still occur for validating transactions. There just won't be a reward. Does that make sense? Why do people mine now? The purpose of mining is validating transactions so that I can send you Bitcoin and it ultimately gets to you. And secondarily, why do I mine? Because I hope to win Bitcoins. I want to get the new Bitcoins out of that pot. Does that make sense? So once all the Bitcoins have been awarded, what's in it for me as a miner? Am I just altruistically validating your transactions with nothing in return? Paying my power bill? So there's going to have to be something that takes over from there. More than likely, and we're already going in this direction, mining becomes more and more corporate. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here, is less and less individuals mine today, at least mine because it makes tons of financial sense. They mine as a hobbyist, because they think it's cool to mine, and just let's see what happens. But it's becoming more and more industrialized, where you have, we were looking at the KNC place where they have their mining facility in abandoned, airplane hangars in the Arctic. This is done on an industrial level. These guys moved to the Arctic to set up their equipment. So what you'll probably have, assuming Bitcoin gets adopted by the banking industry, which it's moving in that direction seemingly, what you'll eventually see is you'll probably see the big banks take over, and the reason they'll keep mining is because they're making money on the validation, which actually causes a problem. Well, one of the cool things about Bitcoin is, it's anonymous, and it costs less than using your credit card, and all this other stuff, and until Big Brother takes over and starts charging you to do this stuff because they're the only ones who will spend the money to mine this stuff. But the hope is something replaces it before 2170. So it's kind of like the Y2K problem. We'll worry about that later. The guys who were writing the software in the 1970s, they didn't think about the, no big deal writing, keeping track of our dates as 2 digits instead of 4. By the time 2000 rolls around, these will be replaced with, robots or something. So something else will have replaced the software. But that's not what happened. People were still reliant on that software. And the year 2000 rolled around, and all this software had to be updated very, very quickly so that it didn't break, because they weren't going to be able to differentiate between the year 1900 and the year 2000. 00 is the same thing as 00. So it's kind of that mentality, which maybe is a little scary, but at least we have more time until 2170. Unless there's the giant jump in mining power. Right now we look at it and say, well, it's kind of out of control. The mining power keeps getting faster and faster and faster. But there is a point where, let's just say that tomorrow somebody releases the time travel chip, where all the computation that's ever happened in the world can be done yesterday. Obviously made up chip, right? But let's just say we could potentially have every Bitcoin that's ever going to exist existing tomorrow, because we wouldn't have time to update the network to make the average time per block back to 10 minutes. If every block took a millionth of a second, or if every block was mined yesterday, with the time travel thing, don't try to think about it too much. Just happens real fast, okay? If the average time of a block is, instead of being 10 minutes, is a tenth of a second, we're going to mine all the blocks that are ever going to be mined that were supposed to be mined all the way through 2170 very, 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 very quickly. And that's going to be problematic. Okay. Now, Moore's Law, which says that, the speed of our processor, speed of computing doubles roughly every 2 years-ish. I think there's some number of months, but whatever it is. Every 2 years. Hopefully that protects us to some point that we're not going to have tomorrow just turn into, 3 terahashes today is considered pretty fast. Tomorrow it's 1,000 terahashes. That's considered entry level. That's probably not going to happen. So, we do have history saying that this probably isn't a major problem. But when it's no longer viable for consumers to mine, there's nothing in it for them, and the banks take over, and they have to make something in it for them, which is what we've done with the credit card companies, right? I mean, credit cards are convenient. How many of you use credit cards? Or the equivalent of debit card, Okay, so, because they're convenient. This is a lot easier to pull out a card and swipe it than to pull out cash, right? Now, most people who, if you read any of the financial books, how to save money and things like that, most of them say, first thing you should do is tear up all the credit cards. Kind of 2 reasons for that. One is it's very easy in today's society to rack up credit card debt, which is probably the worst kind of debt you can have, but it's almost a necessity for some people. Depending on your circumstances, credit cards are the only way you can make your payments. You hope you catch up someday. But the other reason is if you're always spending cash, you feel it. Swiping a credit card, you don't notice. It's like, oh, $7? No problem. $2? No problem. End of the month, like, I spent that much? But if you're spending cash, you feel the money coming out. But human beings like convenience, so we've moved towards credit cards. Debit cards are supposed to be the fix, right? But what happens? It's not really a fix. It hurts a little more when we find out we're overdrawn, right? You swipe and it gets denied because there wasn't enough money in the account. Then what do? You take out the credit card. Swipe that. So, what have banks done to take advantage of the convenience of credit cards? They've inserted fees, right? So a bank gets their money as part of the transaction. If you go to McDonald's and you buy a $5 Happy Meal, how much are Happy Meals now? $3? Are they really? Really? I saw this really funny McDonald's thing yesterday. I thought it was real at first. It was on Facebook, and it was something about the secret menu at McDonald's, and how to order off it. And the first thing was you can order a Big Mac, what's called balled up. So they take the Big Mac and they roll it into a ball, and they give it to you that way. And you're thinking, oh well, it's fast food. You kind of Big Mac kind of all melds together. Maybe that makes sense. I can think about eating a Big Mac kind of like an apple, right? And then the next one was the McChicken balled up. And, so you're going down there, so you start seeing the pattern. Everything's just balled up sandwiches. And then you get to the Happy Meal, the balled up Happy Meal. It's like everything you want. It's the cheeseburger, the fries, a toy, a Go-Gurt, all balled. And then you kind of figure, okay, somebody's probably not eating a toy, so this is probably a joke. But I didn't catch on to the fact that it was a joke until then. Before that, it seemed plausible to me. Wouldn't you eat a balled up Big Mac? Assuming you'd eat a Big Mac to begin with.
It's not the worst thing.
It's like, that could be kind of good. It'd be better if it was like tubed up, then they can give you a dipping sauce. Or if they're going to ball it up, they're going to give you a really big dipping sauce.
You gotta get the Lancy and Air burger.
The who?
Lancy and Air.
Lancy and Air? Is this a McDonald's joke?
Chicken, the beef patty, and the fish patty.
And is this like real? Like if you go there, are they just going to laugh at you?
I don't know.
No, you order them separately, yeah.
You order them separately and build it yourself?
Yeah.
As opposed to telling them, I want to get a quarter pounder with cheese and I want to add a fish patty and a chicken patty to that. By the way, can you just throw that in the fryer for 30 seconds?
Happy Meal's like $3 right now.
Ha!
But if you want the Mighty Kids meal, it's
Mighty
close.
Kids.
They're $5.
You want your kids to get fat quicker.
No, it just comes with apple slices and a small French fry.
Oh, instead of a mini French fry, it's a small French fry that comes with apple slices?
Yeah, so you feel healthy. But then there's like caramel sauce, and that's like.
Caramel sauce. And a small gravy to drink. Okay, so once the banking industry inserts themselves into the payment process with credit cards, they found a way for them to make money. Now, the banks don't make money off you unless you don't pay your bill. So the banks make money on both sides with credit cards, right? They make money off the consumer if you decide to carry a balance on your credit card, which is always kind of counterintuitive. If you're somebody who pays off your credit card every single month, for instance, I always pay off my credit cards. I use credit cards for convenience, have it set on auto pay, just pays it off. Well, I don't know, one time something with my auto pay, they changed their billing address or something, so I got charged the $25 late fee or something from Chase Bank. So I call them up and I'm arguing with them. They erase the fee real easily, but the thing is, you start off and you're trying to tell them, oh, if you look at my records, you'll see I've always paid my bill in full. So my history is that I don't miss payments. So please credit this back. And they did it, but if you think about it from their perspective, you're kind of a bad customer. or at least not the best customer, because they're not collecting anything extra from you. You're good for them from the perspective that you're using the credit card. So when you go to McDonald's and you buy something for $5, McDonald's they probably have a special arrangement with Visa and MasterCard and stuff like that because they're such a big vendor, but they're probably paying 1 or 2% of that transaction to Visa for that transaction. So McDonald's keeps 98% of the $5. Visa gets the other 2% of that $5. So it is beneficial to the credit card companies, even if you pay off your bill, that you use credit cards. But they like to double dip. They want to make it from the store. They also want to make it from the consumer. Charge you on both sides. Which kind of makes sense. As the consumer, they're essentially giving you an easy loan. Correct? You can go out and buy your new Xbox when you don't have enough money for it and pay it off over the next 12 months. And you don't have to take out a real loan. You're just paying the interest, the high interest from the credit card. It's no stress loans. Well, it's stress loans, but you don't have to stress about getting the loan. It's just the paying it off part. So banks like to make money. We can all agree with that, right? Okay, banks are in the business of making money. Well, now we see with cryptocurrencies that banks are starting to get involved. They're at least entertaining the idea of cryptocurrencies. Now, if they get involved, do you think banks are going to be altruistic? Or are they going to look for ways to make money off cryptocurrencies? Validating the transactions. Might the banks, in the absence of miners, if mining becomes less and less profitable because mining is expensive, might banks go into it knowing that mining is a necessity, but also knowing that it's a loss in profit, and then create fees outside of mining for them doing it? Possibly. How do they, if you're a bank and you're dealing with, knowing what you know about cryptocurrencies and how transactions occur, how do you make money off them? So I'm a bank, and let's just say it's costing me $1,000, let's just use simple numbers. It's costing me $1,000 per month just for the right to mine. Okay, $1,000 per month. As a loss. Let's say it's $1,000 per month more than whatever Bitcoins I get. Okay, so I am losing $1,000 per month just to mine Bitcoins for you people. Okay, as a bank. Now that's not good. Banks like to make money, not lose money. But the bank's going to do this. Now, knowing what you know about the organization of Bitcoin transactions, how can the bank then try to make that money back? Where are there other points in transactions where they can make money? If I'm going to send some Bitcoins as a consumer to Abe, can a bank charge me for that? Do they control that? Banks don't control the transactions. They're mining those transactions, but the algorithm dictates how mining works, right? And the algorithm says, hey, here's your new Bitcoins. By the way, your power bill just cost you $1,000 more than what I just gave you in Bitcoins. So banks are losing money there. They can't charge me to send Bitcoins to Abe because they don't control that. That's part of the algorithm. Sending Bitcoins is free, right? Go ahead.
They could charge for like a security for the Bitcoin transaction.
Okay. So one thing they could do is they can charge for your wallets, your bank accounts.
Yeah. Or like
Correct.
even back up your Bitcoins, like.
Well, it's still dealing with your wallet.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, so the security of your wallet. So instead of you having to have a wallet sitting on your own hard drive and backing it up yourself, maybe, it's one thing today that you can go and create a web-based wallet at one of these, one of 1,000 different websites that you've never heard of. But if you were just getting into Bitcoin today, would you be more likely to create an online wallet at blockchain.info or at Chase Bank? Probably Chase Bank. I can tell you blockchain.info is probably one of the most reputable Bitcoin companies. But you're still going to trust Chase Bank over them, right? Because they're a publicly traded company that's under federal scrutiny and all this other stuff. And we know who they are. We don't know who these people are. They might look legit just because they're a big player in a small group of Bitcoin companies, and a big player there might be equivalent to the size of a local dentist. That might not be a big company. It just seems it has a big name in the world of Bitcoin. So you're going to trust a Chase Bank. So now let's just say you're going to limp into Bitcoin, and you have an option. You can open up a free wallet, a free account with blockchain.info, or you can open up an account with Chase Bank, and maybe there is either a minimum balance you have to keep in there, or let's just say let's say it's a one-time fee of $50 to open up the wallet, and you're going to start buying and you're going to start spending Bitcoins to do stuff. Would you be more than likely opening up a free account with blockchain.info or paying $50 one-time fee to Chase Bank? A little bit of harder decision, but many people would still go with Chase Bank because you trust the name, right? So they can make money off that, off storing your wallets, which you can do yourself, but a lot of people don't understand it. How many of you have bank accounts in here? Most of us do, right? You might not keep tons of money in there, but most of us don't just keep all of our financial possessions in our wallet, in our personal wallet. Why? Well, part of it's security, right? You don't want to be one mugging away from losing everything. Well, I mean, it's true statement, right? There at some level we're going to control the total amount of cash we'll carry on ourselves. Maybe it's like a couple $100 max, or something like that. Chances are if you go and cash a check for $5,000, you're not going to walk around with $5,000 in your wallet for a very long time. You want to get that into a bank as soon as possible. So that when you get mugged, you lose less. I mean, it sounds bad when you say it that way, but it's a true statement. It doesn't even have to be mugged. What if you lose your wallet? That happens, right? I had a dream last night that I went swimming with my iPhone in my pocket again. It's actually kind of a multifaceted dream filled with disappointment and happiness. Part of it was my country club installed a whole bunch of new swimming pools, which was awesome. But then I went swimming with my iPhone, which sucked, especially since I'm going to be selling it in 2 days when I get my new one. And then also in the dream, it was Friday. And I wake up and it's Wednesday. Pools was awesome, but there's no new pools. I was just over there. No new pools. They have one pool, but it's like half drained now because it's outdoor. These were indoor pools. It's like a big hot tub. It was awesome. I'm just getting depressed all over again. But the good news is I learned another lesson of don't go swimming with your iPhone in your pocket without actually having to do it. So, reinforcement. So it was good. What's he talking about? Oh, so the banks. Banks are going to find ways to make money off those transactions, correct? So they can make money off storing your Bitcoins for you, even though there's nothing to store. But to the average layperson, storing Bitcoins makes sense, right? Like, oh, okay, they got to go somewhere. We have to store those Bitcoins somewhere. So that makes sense. Where else can a bank make money? Loans. Bitcoin loans. It's like, oh, you want to buy stuff with Bitcoin? Well, everybody's doing it now. It's a new cool thing. So why don't you let us loan you Bitcoins? That's going to help offset the mining. Because guess who gets all the new Bitcoins? Banks. So the banks are getting free Bitcoins every 10 minutes. Not free Bitcoins, but they're getting a new influx in Bitcoins. And when the bank gives you a loan, they're going to charge you interest. Well, the interest rates are probably going to be based off of how much it costs the bank to do mining. So now what used to be a loss now becomes a profit. Correct? So fair to say that banks are going to find a way to make profits on it, right? Now, when you look at a budding cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, are you less inclined to be interested in something like that if in the end the banks are just going to monopolize it? Or do you like banks? How many of you think banks are the enemy? How many of you like banks? They're there for our best interest. Somewhere in the middle, maybe?
I like
I never check my hundreds after I bleach the ones. What you do is you bleach the ones, you turn them into 100, you just go and deposit into account. But you got to do it at multiple branches. Never want to deposit more than $2,500 at a one stop. Generally, we like banks, right? They give us peace of mind. Do we care that banks make a lot of profit? As long as they protect us, right? You know, we talked about this at the beginning of the semester. Where did banks come from? Well, cowboys got shot too often, keeping their money under their hat. So why don't we let the guns point someplace else, right? So we're okay with banks making money because it takes the heat off us. We don't care if other people make money as long as we don't lose money, right? You might be jealous of other people if they're making zillions and zillions and zillions, but at the end of the day, as long as you're not getting screwed over, you're okay with the rich people. Fair enough? Do we need banks in the cryptocurrency scenario? Functionally, no. I'm asking you personally. Most of us in here don't have Bitcoins yet, right? How many of you in here actually have at least 0.001 Bitcoin? That you've done something with it? So like 3 people, 4 people, right? So most of us don't have any Bitcoins. So why have them? I mean, at this point, it's equivalent to go out and buying baseball cards, right? You can't spend them in many places, and you can find probably just as many people that will trade you a baseball card for a burger as you can find people that will trade you a burger for a Bitcoin. Or a fraction. You don't pay a full Bitcoin for a burger. Bad idea. Okay. Oh, there's that was one of the early stories. A person who bought a pizza or bought pizzas with Bitcoin. Somebody spent like 10 Bitcoins on or I think it was more than that. Yeah, it was back when Bitcoins were like a penny. Somebody just paid, a ridiculous number of Bitcoins for a pizza. But back then, nobody was taking Bitcoin, so it was kind of like a funny thing. It was on Bitcoin's birthday. I think this pizza place did it. So they basically gave away a free pizza. I think that place closed their doors because they just had a huge influx in money when Bitcoins went up. So we kind of like banks. Bitcoins don't need banks. Can Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies really take over as a viable currency without some sort of infrastructure in place like a bank? I think maybe not. One concern I have with these things, they're fascinating from a math and computer science perspective, but a concern is you have to trust somebody. Complete anonymity doesn't work. We live in a very strange world now where everybody wants to be anonymous. I was chatting with somebody on Facebook the other day about this article he posted. A person, these 2 people got pulled over by a cop or stopped by a police officer, and the officer asked him for ID. The person refused to give him the ID. Why? I mean, it seems, it's like, well, I shouldn't have to provide identification. And you're right. But if you don't provide identification, doesn't that make you look suspicious? I think so. I think it does. It happened to be, it was a racially motivated thing, and this is one of my former students, happens to be a black guy, and so he was operating off his own experience, where he's been stopped because he was black previously. So we're coming at it from 2 different directions. I'm thinking about it from the perspective, if I didn't do anything, I should be more than happy to be cooperative because this is all one big mistake. But he's less trusting because of his experiences. My feeling is that at some point you have to trust somebody. That doesn't mean you can always trust the cops, but you have to trust somebody. And you can only trust them as much as they are trustworthy. And we have risen banks up to the point where they are trustworthy. Correct? Most of us trust our banks. In the early days of the US dollar, banks weren't that trustworthy. We didn't know to trust banks. They weren't managed by other things. There wasn't oversight for these banks. So is it that the banks themselves are trustworthy, or are they under enough scrutiny from those above, governments and things like that, that they have to be trustworthy? Maybe it's that. Well, if we're going to take cryptocurrencies and we're going to involve banks and then we're going to involve the government, what's the difference between a cryptocurrency and a fiat currency like the US dollar?
You can't print more.
That's it. One aspect of cryptocurrencies that I think are unique is that the birth of the currency, the making of currency, is governed by a math algorithm. And is that good? So this comes back to almost a political discussion. Do we prefer the US government, just using this government as an example, do we prefer them having the ability to print more money when they need it over having to be careful of how they spend so that they have money when they need it? We all wish that we had that flexibility. You know, you pay your monthly bills and stuff like that, then the newest Xbox or whatever comes out and you want to buy it, you don't have enough money. It would be great if you could just go print more money like Steve. You always find a couple of ones laying around, right? Okay. That would be convenient, but we can't do that. But the government can. Do we like the government to have that level of flexibility, or do we want them to be as accountable as we are? And the answer is it probably depends on the day of the week and what's going on in the world at the time. Go ahead.
Well, what's the difference between printing more money and this whole like Bitcoin 2.0 idea? Like, what if Bitcoins become the center of currency, and then whoever made Bitcoin, the mystery guy, he says, okay, it's a big thing now. Now let me make another one, even though it's not complete, like the cycle's not complete. He'll just be like, okay, let me make another one so there's more Bitcoins out there.
Oh, well, it would have to be a brand new currency that we'd have to roll over. Yeah, you don't just start making more Bitcoins.
Yeah, but
it would have to be a brand new currency that people would have to adopt and then buy into that currency with the old currency.
Yeah.
And I would think that new currency would also have to be based on the math algorithm. There wouldn't be somebody who can decide to make more. So really what it comes down to is are there ever situations where printing more money is a necessary evil? Maybe.
Well, they connected to the financial crisis we just had, so.
Well, it got us into that,
Well,
but it also probably got us out.
yeah, it did get us out. But, well, I mean, because people were buying houses who didn't have money for houses.
Mhm.
That was toxic assets for banks, and banks ran out of money, and then they had to print more money to help the banks. And I mean, that hurt people, but I mean, ultimately, that's kind of just what had to be done.
Right. But then it becomes a chicken or the egg. If they hadn't printed money in the first place, would there have been that kind of... But so the question is, can any of us with full confidence say that there is never a situation where printing more money was a necessary evil?
You'd just be Iceland and just let the banks fail.
It becomes a tough thing. With the US dollar, we could choose to not print money. We can choose to be good stewards, right? And not print money unless we absolutely had to. It seems like maybe we are a little bit too loose with just printing money. Maybe. We can make that argument. But with a cryptocurrency, we literally do not have the option. Doesn't exist. If we wanted to create the option of printing more money with Bitcoins, what would we have to do? If we needed an influx of Bitcoins into the world in a very short period of time, how could we pull that off with Bitcoin? Okay. Think about that. That might be a quiz at the beginning of next class. Based on your current knowledge of Bitcoin, how it works, if we needed to have an influx of new Bitcoins into the system in a very short period of time, what could be done? We probably will do it as a discussion, but we might do it as a quiz. If somebody reminds me about it at the beginning of class, we'll do it as a discussion. Otherwise, when I get 10 minutes into class and nobody reminded me and I remember, then we're doing it as a quiz. Okay? If you are interested in seeing the setup in my office, I'll walk over there here in a second and you can check it out if you'd like. Otherwise, maybe we'll do it at the beginning of class next time if you remind me. 2 reminders. Remind me at the beginning of class next time, and before we start the recording, we'll just walk in there and check it out.